What if tonight, after the sun disappears below the horizon and the sky slowly darkens, you look up, and instead of one moon, there are two quiet worlds drifting across the same sky. At first, it might feel magical, but something about the night would immediately feel different. Because if Earth really had two moons, the sky wouldn't just look unusual, the entire planet would begin to behave differently. If Earth had two moons, the first thing we would notice is the sky. But it wouldn't simply be brighter, it would behave differently. Because the two moons wouldn't move together, each one would follow its own orbit. Some nights they would appear close together, almost like twin lights floating above the world. Other nights they would drift far apart, and occasionally both moons would rise at the same time. Two glowing worlds climbing above the horizon. But the strangest change wouldn't be the moons themselves, it would be the shadows. Because with two moons in the sky, you wouldn't cast one shadow anymore. You would cast two. And that raises an interesting question. What if the two moons didn't even look the same? What if Earth had two moons, but they didn't look the same? One would be familiar, the moon we know today, grey, silent, covered in craters. But the second moon might look very different, maybe smaller, maybe larger. Its surface could be darker, almost charcoal black, or brighter, reflecting far more sunlight than our moon. Some nights the sky might hold two very different worlds, one glowing softly, the other shining much brighter. But that leads to another question. Why would the moons look different in the first place? The answer comes down to how moons form. And our moon has a violent origin story. Scientists believe our moon formed billions of years ago, after a massive collision between Earth and a Mars-sized world. The impact sent enormous amounts of debris into space. That debris slowly gathered together, forming the moon. But if that debris had separated into two large clumps instead of one, Earth might have ended up with two moons. And those moons would likely have different sizes, different surfaces, different brightness. But appearance wouldn't be the only difference, because size matters in space. And if one moon were larger, its gravity would be stronger, which means something else on Earth would begin to change. The oceans. Right now, Earth's oceans follow a simple rhythm. The moon pulls on the water, and the seas rise and fall. But with two moons, that rhythm would change. Because the oceans wouldn't feel one pull anymore. They would feel two. Sometimes both moons would pull together, and when that happens, the tides would grow stronger. But other times, the moons would pull in different directions, and that's when the oceans would start behaving differently. Unusual tidal patterns, changing coastlines, water moving in ways we've never experienced. Now imagine looking up and seeing three moons, not two, three. This wouldn't mean Earth suddenly gained another moon. It would be something called a lunar halo. Ice crystals in the atmosphere can bend moonlight into rings and reflections. With two moons in the sky, those reflections could create the illusion of extra moons, ghostly duplicates of the real ones. Multiple glowing circles floating in the night sky. But even illusions like that wouldn't be the most dramatic change, because the presence of two moons could slowly reshape the future of the system itself. Let me ask you something. Right now, as you're sitting there, do you think the ground beneath you is perfectly still? It isn't. Most people know the moon pulls on the oceans. That part is familiar. But what almost nobody thinks about is this. The moon also pulls on the land. The planet itself bends, very slightly, very quietly, but it does. Scientists call them solid Earth tides. The crust of Earth actually rises and falls. As the moon moves overhead, you don't feel it, you don't see it, but the ground beneath your feet can shift by several centimeters. Now stop and imagine that for a second. An entire planet flexing under the pull of a world in the sky, and then imagine adding a second moon. Two pulls, two shifting directions, two invisible hands slowly bending the planet in a far more complicated rhythm. Not enough to tear Earth apart, not enough to make cities collapse, but enough to remind you that moons are not decorations. They reach all the way down into the body of the planet itself. And if two moons can move the ground beneath you, then imagine what happens when their shadows begin racing across the Earth.